Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor.
I was very surprised a couple of days ago. I have for decades said that the Old Testament doesn't say much about what happens after you die. It's very vague. It's, you descend to Sheol and whatever that means. And I know that my Redeemer liveth. Job's answer is essentially, God is just and I will trust in him. But I don't know what happens after we die. Anyway, but then I was reading in the Wisdom of Solomon, and there is a chapter which talks a lot about what happens after you die, which I had never really tuned into. And I'd kind of be a little bit curious what a modernist rabbi makes of it, a semi-modernist rabbi, one who actually believes that the scriptures come from God. That's not a modernist rabbi at all. You have no idea how bad, how modernist rabbis are. But anyway, a fairly traditional rabbi makes of the Wisdom of Solomon, because it certainly sounds to me like he's talking about heaven and hell and the general judgment. So I'm just going to read it. It's a pretty long chapter, but I hope I'm inspired to talk as I go along. Oh, here it is. It's the beginning, actually, of the Wisdom of Solomon. Love justice, you rulers of the earth. Set your mind upon the Lord, as is your duty, and seek him in simplicity of heart, for he is found by those who trust him without question, and makes himself known to those who never doubt him. Dishonest thinking cuts men off from God, and if fools will take liberties with his power, he shows them up for what they are. Wisdom will not enter a shifty soul, nor make her home in a body that is mortgaged to sin. Now, this sounds a lot like Paul, and it's definitely true that the light of wisdom, I don't know if I technically can call it the Holy Ghost, but the illumination of the mind, which comes from God, is blocked by mortal sin. And it's also blocked by sophistry, dishonest thinking, thinking, you know better than God, rationalization, and so forth. I just had an interaction with my Reconstructionist rabbi friend, so I've seen a lot of that. Okay. You just do not get any light from God. Okay. The Holy Spirit of discipline will have nothing to do with falsehood. She cannot stay in the presence of unreason, and will throw up her case at the approach of injustice. Wisdom is a spirit devoted to man's good, and she will not hold a blasphemer blameless for his words, because God is a witness of his inmost being, who sees clear into his heart and hears every word he says. See, this all sounds to me, it sounds very kind of Christian, New Testament, wisdom of the Catholic saints and so forth. And it's really true, right? It's like the practice of the presence of God. One of the reasons I do this, and one of the reasons I try to be careful when I talk on my live streams, is because, guess what? There is a video recorder going. This stuff is being preserved not only by YouTube, not only by the NSA, but for all eternity by God. And so, pretty sobering. He not only knows every word you say, but he knows your every innermost thought. For the Spirit of the Lord fills the whole earth, and that which holds all things together is well aware of what men say. Okay, I mean, science has done a lot of damage to understanding God and the world. He holds all things together. Everything in the atom, everything in every cell in your body, everything between the water and the trees and the earth and nature, physics, chemistry. He holds all of that together. You think that the one who holds all of that together isn't aware of what men say? Anyway, continuing. Hence no man can utter injustice and not be found out, nor will justice overlook him when she passes sentence. Aha, there's some sentence that's going to be passed. The devices of a godless man will be brought to account, and a report of his words will come before the Lord as proof of his iniquity. No muttered syllable escapes that vigilant ear. And this is absolutely true. Okay? Every action has a moral content. The moral content is weighed in the balance, and every action is recorded and is part of God's awareness of us and part of God's judgment on us. Of course, I'm leaving aside sacramental confession for the sake of this conversation, but then again, there was no sacramental confession before the church. Beware then of futile grumbling, and avoid all bitter words, for even a secret whisper will not go unheeded, and a lying tongue is a man's destruction. Do not stray from the path of life, and so court death. Do not draw disaster on yourselves by your own actions. For God did not make death, and takes no pleasure in the destruction of any living thing. He created all things that they might have being. The creative forces of the world make for life. There is no deadly poison in them. Death is not king on earth, for justice is immortal. But godless men, by their words and deeds, have asked death for his company. Okay, so here it sounds to me like you have heaven and hell and life and death. And basically, God doesn't intend the death of us. God is not about death. God is about life. The creative forces of the world, what emanates from God is life, not death. However, the godless man is choosing death. The godless man, what's it say here? But godless men by their words and deeds have asked death for his company. In other words, perdition. In other words, being lost. And it's because godless men are asking for that. It's not because it's part of God's creation. It's part of rejecting God and his creation. God and his creation is life. Rejecting God and his creation is death. Thinking him their friend, they have made a pact with him, because they are fit members of his party, and so they have wasted away. The him is the devil, right? Or death. Thinking death their friend, they have made a pact with him, because they are fit members of his party, and so they have wasted away. You choose God or you choose Satan. You choose life or you choose death. They said to themselves in their deluded way, our life is short and full of trouble, and when a man comes to his end, there is no remedy. No man was ever known to return from the grave. By mere chance were we born, and afterwards we shall be as though we had never been. For the breath in our nostrils is but a wisp of smoke. Our reason is a mere spark kept alive by the beating of our hearts. And when that goes out, our body will turn to ashes, and the breath of our life disperse like empty air. It sounds like what I learned at MIT, right? It sounds like everything on PBS. It sounds like the contemporary scientific view of the world and of life, right? This is written, 3,000 years ago? You couldn't do a better job of describing the contemporary view of life and death. By mere chance were we born. Evolution, right, is mere chance. By mere chance were we born, and afterwards we shall be as though we had never been, right, when we're dead is all over. For the breath in our nostrils is but a wisp of smoke. Our reason is a mere spark kept alive by the beating of our hearts. How often do you read that all of our thoughts and all of our brain activity is just electrical signals that somehow get created within us? Anyway, I was blown away when I read this the other day. Our names will be forgotten with the passing of time, and no one will remember anything we did. Our life will blow over like the last vestige of a cloud, and as a mist is chased away by sun's rays and overborne by its heat, so will it too be dispersed. A passing shadow, such is our life, and there is no postponement of our end. Man's fate is sealed, and none returns. Come then, Let us enjoy the good things while we can and make full use of the creation with all the eagerness of youth. Let us have costly wines and perfumes to our heart's content, and let no flower of spring escape us. Let us crown ourselves with rosebuds before they can wither. Let none of us miss his share of the good things that are ours. Who cares what traces our revelry leaves behind? This is the life for us. It is our birthright. I don't know of a better definition of hedonism and living for pleasure. Many of us actually entered that on leaving adolescence, right? I mean, the first phase of adulthood and independence. Let none of us miss his share of the good things that are ours. Who cares what traces our revelry leaves behind? This is the life for us. It is our birthright. Traces our revelry leaves behind. I don't know if he's talking about the damage to other people. I don't know if he's talking about the damage which comes from fornication or adultery, or even the, physiological results of that or whatever. But in any case, who cares what traces our revelry leaves behind? This is the life for us. It is our birthright. Okay, now there comes a little shift in tone, which gets very Christological. Down with the poor and honest man. Let us tread him underfoot. Let us show no mercy to the widow, and no reverence to the gray hairs of old age. For us let might be right. Weakness is proved to be good for nothing. Let us lay a trap for the just man. He stands in our way, a check to us at every turn. He girds at us as lawbreakers and calls us traitors to our upbringing. He knows God, so he says. He styles himself the servant of the Lord. He is a living condemnation of all our ideas. The very sight of him is an affliction to us, because his life is not like other people's, and his ways are different. He rejects us like base coin, and avoids us in our ways as if we were filth. He says that the just die happy, and boasts that God is his Father. In case you haven't picked up on this, this is a perfect description of Jesus. So it's pretty interesting. You have this passage in the Old Testament, or this chapter, which is contrasting effective atheism, materialism, pseudo-scientificness, hedonism, with Christianity, with Jesus Christ. Okay, so here goes. I'll continue. Let us test the truth of his words. Let us see what will happen to him in the end. For if the just man is God's son, God will stretch out a hand to him and save him from the clutches of his enemies. Outrage and torment are the means to try him with, to measure his forbearance and learn how long his patience lasts. Let us condemn him to a shameful death, for on his own showing he will have a protector. This might as well have been the priests and the Pharisees, right? Talking among themselves just before the crucifixion. Every word in this last paragraph. Let us lay a trap for the just man. He stands in our way, a check to us at every turn, calls us traitors to our upbringing, right? He says, oh, you high priests, you think you're the experts on Judaism and are the perfect Jews. Well, you're traitors to Judaism, right? This is Jesus. He knows God. Jesus says he knows God. He styles himself the servant of the Lord. Jesus styled himself the servant of the Lord plus the Son of God. He is a living condemnation of all our ideas. The very sight of him is an affliction to us. He rejects us like base coin. Jesus really did reject, right? And like base coin, meaning fraudulent coin, meaning a gold coin that isn't really gold, but it's, an alloy or it's lead or something. That's exactly what the priests and the Pharisees were. They were fakes. They were frauds. They were pretending to be something they weren't, like a base coin, like a gold coin that isn't made out of gold. He avoids us in our ways as if we were filth. He says that the just die happy and boasts that God is his Father. This is Jesus. It's plain and simple. Let us test the truth of his words. Let us see what will happen to him in the end, for the just man is God's son. God will stretch out a hand to him and save him from the clutches of his enemies. they said that at the foot of the cross, right? You're God's, if you're the Messiah, come down from the cross and save yourself. If you're the Messiah, God will save you. Outrage and torment are the means to try him with, to measure his forbearance and learn how long his patience lasts. Well, they did learn how long his patience lasted. It lasted till the end. Anyway, incredible, right? That you have such a graphic description, not only of the crucifixion, but of the entire spiritual dynamic that was going on between the priesthood within Judaism, with the leaders and shakers and theologians and rabbis and priests of Judaism and Jesus. The entire dynamic, and it's in this context of this dynamic between choosing life and choosing death and Satan versus God. Anyway, continue. So they argued, and very wrong they were. Blinded by their own malevolence, they did not understand God's hidden plan. They never expected that holiness of life would have its recompense. They thought that innocence had no reward. But God created man for immortality and made him the image of his own eternal self. It was the devil's spite that brought death into the world, and the experience of it is reserved for those who take his side. Okay? So, look, obviously, we all die in a physical sense. But given that we all die in a physical sense, nobody, even in those days, were stupid enough to think that, there were 10,000-year-old men walking the earth, or 3,000-year-old men walking the earth, because of the time since creation. But anyway, they knew that everyone physically dies. However, God created man for immortality and made him the image of his own eternal self. It was the devil's spite that brought death into the world, and it's only those who take his side that see death, that lose eternal life. But the souls of the just are in God's hand, and torment shall not touch them. In the eyes of foolish men they seem to be dead. Their departure was reckoned as defeat, their going from us as disaster, but they are at peace. For though in the sight of men they may be punished, they have a sure hope of immortality. And after a little chastisement they will receive great blessings, because God has tested them and found them worthy to be his. Like gold in a crucible he put them to the proof, and found them acceptable like a burnt offering whole upon the altar. In a moment of God's coming to them, they will kindle into flame like sparks that sweep through stubble. They will be judges and rulers over the nations of the world, and the Lord shall be their king forever and ever. Those who have put their trust in him shall understand that he is true, and the faithful shall attend upon him in love. They are his chosen, and grace and mercy shall be theirs. It's a great picture of heaven. It's a great picture of judgment. I mean, I excuse me, I'm not boasting about my ignorance, but I was unaware that the Jews in the Old Testament had such a clear insight into heaven and hell. It's time to turn to hell. But the godless shall meet with the punishment their evil thoughts deserve, because they took no account of justice and rebelled against the Lord. Wretched indeed is he who thinks nothing of wisdom and discipline. Such men's hopes are void, their labors unprofitable, their actions futile, their wives are frivolous, their children criminal, their parenthood is under a curse. No, blessed is the childless woman if she is innocent, if she has never slept with a man in sin. At the great council of souls she shall find a fruitfulness of her own. Blessed is the eunuch if he has never done anything against the law, and never harbored a wicked thought against the Lord. He shall receive special favor in return for his faith, and a place in the Lord's temple to delight his heart the more. Honest work bears glorious fruit, and wisdom grows from roots that are imperishable. But the children of adultery are like fruit that never ripens. They have sprung from a lawless union and will come to nothing. Even if they attain length of life, they will be of no account, and at the end their old age will be without honor. If they die young, they will have no hope, no consolation in the hour of judgment. The unjust generation has a hard fate in store for it. But the good man, even if he dies an untimely death, will be at rest. His soul is pleasing to the Lord. Um, I'm skipping a little bit because it's a long chapter, and it is also true, in full disclosure, that when I read this, it seems to shift back and forth sometimes from talking more about eternal punishment and eternal reward and temporal punishment and temporal reward. In other words, punishment on earth, reward on earth, or punishment for eternity in hell and reward for eternity in heaven. I'm skipping some of the more earthly paragraphs that seem to be talking about the temporal reward and punishment. The mass of men give it no thought, they do not lay to heart this truth, that those whom God has chosen to enjoy his grace and mercy, he comes to the help of his holy people. Even after his death, the just man will shame the godless who are still alive. Youth come quickly to perfection will shame the man grown old in sin. Men will see the wise man's end without understanding that what the Lord had purposed for him and why he took him into safekeeping. They will see it and make light of him, but it is they whom the Lord will laugh to scorn. You see, because what I thought the teaching of Judaism was, and what the unenlightened teaching of Judaism, which Solomon is criticizing here, is that you get all your reward on earth and you get all your punishment on earth. And if you die young, that means you were displeasing to God. Solomon here is saying, no, for all you know, those who die young were so pleasing to God that God saved them from sin in the future, that he took them when they were at a ripe peak and before they could decay or go wrong. So don't look at how long someone's life is to decide whether he was victorious in the eyes of God or a failure in the eyes of God. Men will see the wise man's end without understanding what the Lord had purposed for him and why he took him into safekeeping. They will see it and make light of him, but it is they whom the Lord will laugh to scorn. In death their bodies will be dishonored, and among the dead they will be an object of contempt forever. For he shall strike them speechless, fling them headlong, shake them from their foundations, and make an utter desert of them. They shall be full of anguish, and all memory of them shall perish. So in the day of reckoning for their sins they will come cringing, convicted to their face by their lawless doings. Sounds like hell. And it not only sounds like hell, but it actually, to me, sounds like the general judgment. It says they will be an object of contempt forever. Remember, at the general judgment, that's at the end of the world, everyone will have received a particular judgment at the moment of death. But at the general judgment, everyone will be gathered together, and everyone will see everyone else's judgment, and they'll see everyone else's judgment. So those who had an unfortunate judgment will be objects of contempt for all eternity. And those who were pleasing to God will be receiving honor in some sense from the people who were holding them in contempt and choosing sin. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying that that's the picture that emerges when I read that. In death their bodies will be dishonored, and among the dead they will be an object of contempt forever. It certainly feels like the general judgment to me. And continuing, because it continues feeling like the general judgment. Then the just man shall take his stand, full of assurance, to confront those who oppressed him and made light of all his sufferings. At the sight of him there will be terror and confusion, and they will be beside themselves to see him so unexpectedly safe home. Filled with remorse, groaning and gasping for breath, they will say among themselves, was not this the man who was once our butt, a target for our contempt? Fools that we were, we held his way of life to be madness and his end dishonorable. To think that he is now counted one of the sons of God and assigned a place of his own among God's people. How far we strayed from the road of truth. The lamp of justice never gave us light. The sun never rose upon us. We roamed to our heart's content among the paths of wickedness and ruin, wandering through trackless deserts and ignoring the Lord's highway. What good has our pride done us? What can we show for all our wealth and arrogance? All those things have passed by like a shadow, like a messenger galloping by, like a ship that runs through the surging sea. And when she has passed, not a trace is to be found, no track of her keel among the waves. Or as when a bird flies through the air, there is no sign of her passing, but with a stroke of her pinion she lashes the insubstantial breeze and parts it with the whir and rush of her beating wings, and so she passes through it, and thereafter it bears no mark of her assault. Okay, to me this has to be the general judgment, right? The wicked are seeing what the future of the just are. The just are seeing what the future of the wicked are. The wicked are understanding the difference. They're understanding their mistake. They're understanding their destiny. Anyway, just in case you want to check this out, it's the Wisdom of Solomon. Now I'm on chapter 5. And it's also beautiful poetry. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and there's images of insubstantiality and things passing away. So I actually stopped before I got to the end of that long sentence. Or as when an arrow shot at a target, the air is parted and instantly closes up again, and no one can tell where it passed through. And that's what happens to these people who are lost. So too we ceased to be as soon as we were born. We left no token of virtue behind, and in our wickedness we frittered our lives away. The hope of a godless man is like down flying on the wind, like spindrift swept before a storm, and smoke which the wind whirls away, or like the memory of a guest who stayed for one day and passed on. But the just shall live forever. Their reward is in the Lord's keeping, and the Most High has them in his care. Therefore royal splendor shall be theirs, and a fair diadem from the Lord himself. He will protect them with his right hand and shield them with his arm. He will put on from head to foot the armor of his wrath, and make all creation his weapon against his enemies. This really does sound like the final judgment. With the cuirass of justice on his breast, and on his head the helmet of doom inflexible, he will take holiness for his impenetrable shield, and sharpen his relentless anger for a sword, and his whole world shall join him in the fight against his frenzied foes. The bolts of his lightning shall fly straight on the mark. They shall leap upon the target as if his bow in the clouds were drawn in its full arc, and the artillery of his resentment shall let fly a fury of hail. The waters of the sea shall rage over them, and the rivers wash them relentlessly away. A great tempest will rise against them, and blow them away like chaff before a whirlwind. So lawlessness will make the whole world desolate, and active wickedness will overturn the thrones of princes. Anyway, so that I was reading chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Wisdom of Solomon. It is a great book in the Old Testament. I wanted to share that with you. So that is my talk for today.